Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I wanted to check in with someone who's an expert on investments and particularly investments and investing for females. And I want to introduce you tonight to Elke Rubach, who is the principal of Rubach Wealth, a leading wealth management firm she founded in 2012. Her mission is to provide tax-efficient financial planning to help clients build multi-generational legacies. That sounds good. Multi-generational legacies. We have to find out about that. Drawing from her personal experience of facing an unexpected financial crisis, Elke has spent her career advising clients on wealth management, estate planning, and investing in ways that align with their values and goals. It's built on her vision. Rubach Wealth is built on her vision that all clients, especially women, need to be financially independent. She believes that conversations around financial planning need to be normalized, that it's essential for clients to be responsible with their money. Elke is an active volunteer for some of Canada's leading children's causes, including pediatric cancer care and research with sick kids and the development of Ronald McDonald houses. Elke, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. Very, very well.
So why do particularly females have to have conversations around financial planning? Do we not talk about money enough?
Well, there are many levels to this discussion. And to me, everybody needs to be financially independent because otherwise you're not independent, period. When it comes to women, it's, relatively new that we're, breaking the glass ceiling and making progress in the professional world. But we're also making more decisions, and we tend to be a little bit nervous about asking questions. My point the point I want to make is this is your life. The impact of your decisions will affect your life. So you should feel completely entitled to make as many questions as you need to understand the implications, the consequences of whatever decision you decide to move forward with. So it's normalizing the conversation around money, understanding that money is not an end, it's a means. Some people have more, some people have less. But the chances of building multi-generational legacies is greatly diminished when people don't talk about money. People think, it's evil, it's a problem, and it's if you don't talk about it, the chances of a problem popping up is that much greater.
What is a multi-generational legacy?
Inheritance, succession planning, making sure that, Canada is a baby country. It's only 150 odd years old. It's really, really young. A lot of us came here 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's the next generation that is the Canadian generation. And all of those who came and built their future here have a sense of pride in whatever initiative they started, be it a convenience store, be it, a business and a manufacturing company and so on. So there's this pride. And obviously parents mean well for their children. And historically, we've been focused on accumulation of wealth, increasing the net worth, the rate of return on your investments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for that legacy to be able to trickle down to next generations, it is crucial that we spend as much time accumulating than we spend on teaching stewardship of wealth. If the next generation is not ready or not willing or not interested in taking over the business that the parents started, big or small, let's have the conversation. How do we maximize value? How do we make sure that you're not passing on a business that they're not even interested in, or they don't even know how to do it? Because then the value of that enterprise is going to go down the drain. And that's, the short sleeve to short sleeve in 3 generations.
In 3 generations. And it sounds like it's pretty consistent, that rule.
Correct. And we're also squeezed up between generations, right? People who come from the post-war mentality have a very specific financial philosophy.
Save and suffer.
Correct. Like, I bring food to the table, you go to school, you're on your own, right? Off you go. our generation is fairly more affluent in general terms. So we want to give our kids the best. Again, ranges. And obviously our parents look at us and they assume that we've gone bananas. But then you have the next generation that says, I absolutely love the lifestyle that you've provided me with. I know that with my education, I can do better or should do better, generally speaking, but I am not prepared to sacrifice my me time, my family time, time with my kids, because we didn't really see you, mom or dad, because you guys were working. So to marry those three mentalities in an intergenerational planning exercise, it's an art. It's not a science.
We're chatting tonight about financial planning and particularly financial planning for females. And we're going to take a break for some messages and come back more in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Elke Rubach, who is a president of Rubach Wealth Holistic Family Advisors, and someone who has got an incredible amount of experience in investing and wealth management, and someone that believes very strongly that females particularly have to have a financial plan. I just want to tell you a little bit about this individual, because my gosh, what a background. And I've never, ever seen someone with more letters after their name in my whole entire life. Let me just tell you what she's got here. Like, it's incredible. So Elke, you have got an LLB, an LLM, a CFP, a CLU, an FEA, and an MFA-P. What the heck are all those?
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, I love to study, and that's my thing. I'm always curious and trying to learn about more things, and I'm currently enrolled in a couple more. So lawyer by training with a master's of law from the London School of Economics. But then I saw the light. I'm no longer practicing law. Then I realized that there was a lot of opportunity for me to help people in this side of the side of the fence, financial planning, but it's a lot more than just financial planning, right? Then CLU, it tells the world that you know what you're talking about when you talk about insurance and risk management. CFP is Certified Financial Planner. I know how to run a plan. MFAP is I spend a lot of time talking to my clients about philanthropy and the different vehicles, ways, options that they can implement to express their philanthropy. And FEA is Family Enterprise Advisor, so I can talk about these intergenerational plans and making sure that the value of the enterprise is maximized when it comes to passing it on. Lots of good letters after your name. Pretty impressive. You've got a law degree from a university in Mexico. You've got a level 1 corporate governance from the Canadian Diversity Board Council. And as you mentioned, you've got an LLM in law from the London School of Economics, and quite the impressive career as well. You were an associate with a law firm that would appear in the United States, and then with McCutcheon Tetro. Then you worked for 6 years in Scotia McLeod in compliance. Then you were a member of the board of directors of Toronto Parking Authority. So we can all complain to you when we get parking tickets, I presume. No, that wasn't us. That's the enforcement group. Everybody hates the poor parking people. The parking people just provide parking. It's the enforcement officers from the Toronto Police. Very different. Oh, okay. And then you were an ambassador with French Founders. Do you speak French? Fluently, yes. Fantastic. And then you were on the advisory board of something called Transpod, a next generation of affordable and sustainable high-speed transportation for a better connected and fossil fuel societies. That sounds interesting. It might be a good conversation at some point in time. Member of the investment advisory group of the Office of the Public Guardian, which is all about diversification of investments, investment strategy, custodial services, and other investments. And
for the last 10 years, president of Rubach Wealth, Holistic Family Advisors, a boutique family office firm. Pretty impressive.
Thank you. I love it.
And you told me you grew up in Mexico and have immigrated to Canada?
Yes. So I studied law, and normal people go, law school, and you do your master's in the US, and then you work in New York for a year, and then you go back to your partnership track. I did it differently. I studied law, moved to England, had the Chapman scholarship. So I studied law there, the master's there, started working at McCarthy's in London. And then there was one of the situations that called me to come to Canada for a year. And that's 19 years ago. So I'm staying. You
fell in love with Canada. Fantastic.
Correct. 3 kids later, I'm still here.
Oh, you just got stuck. Oh, okay. I understand that the income gap between males and females is something that you think affects women's retirement planning and needs to be taken into account. Tell me about that.
Well, it goes back to normalizing conversation about money. It's not a secret that women are paid less than men. So let's talk about it. Let's be in a position where we can get paid by job, not by gender, right? Women need a lot of support when it comes to negotiating their jobs, their salaries, their so on. So when from my perspective, if I can help them support their decisions with a financial plan and show them that if they negotiate, the impact of those extra $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 or $100,000 will make a huge impact in the future. Well, it's an informed decision. And if they don't see what's obvious with numbers, well, then I can't really help there. But, numbers don't lie. And when there's no financial literacy really in any Canadian program and probably around the world. So if we can normalize talking about money, understand the concept of a financial plan, it doesn't have to be incomprehensible. You don't have to be faced with 6,000 mathematical models that you don't understand. It's just go to the core, go to the basic. Where is the money coming from? Where is it going to? From the where is it going to? What can you not, negotiate? You have to pay rent, you have to pay mortgage, you have to pay, your non-discretionary spend. What is it? And on the discretionary side, is everything important there, or should we cut it back, or should we modify things? And it's a conversation. I understand the concept of, cut the $5 latte and you're going to be a millionaire. But by the same token, is that latte very important to you? Let's see, can we build it into your model? And then you have an idea of what's going on, the implications of your decisions. And it's not a matter of becoming a martyr. So if it's important to you, can we add it to your plan? And then from there, have the right level of insurance, understand your insurance. What does it do? What does it not do? How does it work? Different companies have different products, and it's not the client's job to find that out, but it is the advisor's role to understand what the client wants to do and see which one you put in front of them. And then once all these issues that you can't really control if you're going to die, you can't really control, you can't really control if you're going to become disabled or get sick. Well, then once you have some kind of risk management tool for that, then you talk about asset management, then you talk about diversification. We put together tax efficient planning, investment options, all that stuff will come, but let's start from the beginning. Because if you don't have, for example, nobody has a will, and it boggles my mind. I have a will and it's all happy and done. But people don't have a will, and they're obsessed with the rate of return and what their investments are doing. Does anyone know what happens when you don't have a will? And let's say all your assets are gone. And being part of the public guardian and trustee, I know how much money we manage because people did not have a will. And it is really an absolute tragedy.
Okay, so tell me, what happens if you don't have a will?
Well, first of all, you have absolutely zero control over your assets. The tax efficiencies that you could have implemented are not happening. The assets may get distributed in a way that you didn't want. Those who have an old will and still have the ex-spouse as an executor might not be that thrilled. But, regardless of the assets, regardless of anything, how many people have no idea what happens with the guardianship of the children? Where are these kids going? And just because they haven't found a second best option, then they just don't have a will because they haven't been able to decide who the best guardian would be for the kids. I'm like, well,
okay, so tell me, if you don't have a will, what happens to your wealth? Does it go to your spouse or your ex-spouse or your kids? What's sort of the de facto situation?
It all depends, and it's provincially governed, so that's different in every place. But are you married or are you not married? If you're not married, the division of property is different. And if the kids are minors, their share goes in custody to the office of the public guardian. So that's probably not what you want. And the mandate for us at the public guardian is to grow the assets as much as possible with a really, really, really small risk. So the growth is minimal, right? So if obviously nobody's planning on dying, but if that happens, can we at least try to give more to the next generation?
So I heard one wealth advisor tell me the stupidest thing you can do is die single, because your estate gets taxed at about 30%, but if you leave it to a spouse, you can pass it on tax-free to the spouse. Is that true?
Well, some assets, yes. So there's this concept of deemed disposition at death. And there are certain things that are rolled over to the spouse, be it the house, be it the registered accounts and so on. But to me, yes, the assets is like, at the end of it, if you don't have the will, CRA is the one who wins. But at the end of the day, it's more the mess you leave behind for the family that you say you loved. And it's just, again, a tragedy. People could have had a list. People could have deposited all their documents in one place. They could have said what they wanted to do with, grandma's chair. If you can do it, and that exercise will have to be done by you, that you know where your things are, or by your family who's trying to put the person, in the cemetery, and at the same time figure out which accounts were where. Was there a safety deposit box? Where are the investments? Who were the advisors? And everything's all over the place. So
what happens to children guardianship if you do not have a will?
Well, there are certain rules that there will be a temporary person that will look after them. But at the end of the day, if they're minors, they might end up in foster care if nobody else jumps in to claim them, right? Or says, I want to be with them. Or it could be that maybe you said, my sister will take my kids, but financially she can't afford them. So if she can't, why are you putting the kids through this pain? And they might go together and they might not go together for foster care. Like, something that has always bewildered me is, you buy a car, you cannot leave the dealership without insurance, correct?
Yep.
You leave the hospital with a newborn, and as long as that little bundle of joy is snug in the car seat, you're good to go. And I'm like, okay, so that's where you have all these GoFundMes because there were no final expenses. I'm not saying insurance is bound to be, the way to become rich, but at least don't leave a mess. If you have a kid, at least have final expenses, at least have a will. The other things like, okay, you didn't die, but now you cannot make decisions. Who's your power of attorney? Who decides what? When do they pull the plug? How long do you want to be connected? All those things that can be easily done if you normalize talking about money and death could be avoided. And we all know that taxes and death are going to happen. So I
understand that there's something called TMI that is something you think we all need to be mindful of. Tell me what TMI is.
TMI, too much information? I don't think there's such thing. I think if you normalize it with your family and, talk about any money concern you have, the kids need to hear that too, to make them, understand that it's not just happy moments. Money and earning money has a value and it takes time and effort and so on. A lot of kids think that credit cards are just like abracadabras and you don't have to pay the credit card.
Yes, I know some kids that think exactly that way.
Yeah.
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra. It's like, well, if you don't have money, why don't you pay with a check? I'm like, because the check has to clear somewhere. So it's the conversation, and you can't blame them because they're not seeing the actual exchange of money. But if you show them like, well, yes, but there's this money that comes from this account, and that account was fed by this paycheck that I earned by working, 15 or 20 days or whatever the case is, then they see that it's not magic, because it's not magic, right? Kids who have never been made responsible for anything, things like we pay bills, we have mortgages, dad got laid off, or I don't know, like the situations are multiple. And again, the ranges are super wide, but it's talk about it. I don't think there's ever too much information. Obviously, you know your kids better, and you're not going to talk to a 2-year-old the same way you talk to a 30-year-old. I have seen exceptions, but I strongly recommend you don't. But even if you have to talk to a 30-year-old, like a 2-year-old, if that's what they need to understand what's going on here, it's better.
We're chatting tonight with Elke Rubach, who is the principal of Rubach Wealth, talking about financial plans, particularly for females, wills, taxes and death, guardianship, etc. Wonderful conversation, my gosh. But it's one of those things that we do have to have a conversation about. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Elke in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're talking about personal wealth and planning tonight with Elke Rubach, who is the principal of Rubach Wealth, the leading wealth management firm that she founded in 2012. Elke has got more letters after her name than almost anyone I've ever met. She's got an LLB, an LLM, a CFP, a CLU, an FEA, and some more. So pretty impressive. She's been a lawyer. She is a lawyer. She's been a lawyer. She's worked in a bank, at least in the wealth management side of a bank. And now she runs her own wealth management company. One of the things, Elke, that you had mentioned is that insurance is one of those things that we need to be mindful of, and that can, number one, cover expenses when you pass away that are critically important. But you also said it was a very way of being tax efficient in your creation of wealth. Tell me a little bit about how you talk to clients about insurance and what different types of insurance and what they do.
Well, it's funny because for insurance, I always call him the ugly cousin that nobody likes, but everybody has to invite to the party. Well, insurance, insurance is something that is sold because things happen, right? So there's life insurance, there's critical illness insurance, there's disability insurance, and then there's a million other types of insurance that everybody's much more focused on, car insurance and home insurance and all these insurance. But when it comes to, if you're the goose that lays the golden egg, you're the one who produces, and you don't protect the goose and the egg, protecting your house and your car and your business and all the other things, it's kind of like a table missing a leg. Unfortunately, the industry has a bad reputation. And I would say that in a majority of cases, advisors mean well, and they're doing the right thing. But there are the ones that just push insurance because it's profitable and it does what it thinks it does, and so on. But the way we do it is differently. We're not going to tell you, hey, Brian, you need to buy insurance. I want to know what is important for you. And I'll ask you, what's important for you, be it your family, your job, your house, your whatever it is, your community. And then we'll look at what kind of insurance do you currently have? Do you understand how it works? And in order to protect what you're telling me that is so important to you, we can talk about insurance. So let me give you an example of life insurance. Life insurance, at the very, very, very minimum, and assuming we're talking to the average Canadian, you need enough for a little cash flow, final expenses, and protect your family from having to deal at a very emotional time and making financial decisions when their brains are just foggy. $25,000 to $50,000 could do the trick. If you buy that early, it's absolutely dirt cheap. You cannot not buy it. But that's kind of like risk management at its minimum, so we don't have to hate the family member when they died because they didn't leave anything behind. They just left a problem. After that, well, you have a house. You owe a mortgage. If you die, do you want your spouse to have to fire sell the house and get out with whatever equity that was left? Or for relatively inexpensive amounts, and depending on the age and lifestyle of the person, do you want to leave enough money for that to be covered so they can just deal with future income or etc.? So it has to be the right amount. And people need to understand the importance of simplicity. You need what you have and you have what you need. Get rid of everything else. So that's
hold it. You need what you have and you have what you need. What do you mean by that?
Do you know what you have? And then you're like, well, I think I have that. So part of our discovery process is organizing, what do you have? And nobody knows. It's stuff everywhere because they bought this because somebody told them that was good and they don't remember how it works. Okay, so we go through everything. This works like this. Is this still important? Yes or no? No? Pitch it. Like literally like Marie Kondo. Hug it. Does it make you happy? No, pitch it. And then when we say, or they say, oh, I don't want that anymore. Okay, hold on. Before you cancel an insurance policy, let me show you what it does. Let me show you why you would use it. And let's see if we can find something better that adapts to your needs more or not. And then we make a decision. Like people think that financial planning is done overnight. No, it took you 30, 40, 50 years to get to the mess you are now or the lack of clarity that you're now. It's going to take a while to do this thing right. And doing it fast is a bad idea. If I just sell you an insurance policy just like that, I'm not doing you any services or helping you in any get in, ahead. So it's really, what do you have? How does it work? What part of the puzzle does this belong to? And does it belong to your puzzle at all? And it's a conversation. And then we make sure that everything's included in the plan. So we know what you have. A, do you need all of that? And then from what you're telling me that you want to do, you need to do this, this, and this. Do you have that? Can we adapt it? Or do we need to replace or change or add? And it's a two-way conversation because I also want the individual, the family, to be part of the conversation. Right. If I just tell them what to do, they're not really taking ownership and they're not showing me that they're understanding where we're heading.
So I had one financial planner at one point in time tell me that the amount of life insurance you should have is 3 times your income. Is there any rule of thumb like that you use?
I'm a big enemy of rule of thumb. So you need final expenses. You need to tell me, do you want to clear all debt? And does that mean you owe $50,000 to you owe $6 million, right? It's a very different conversation. Are you interested in leaving money behind for your children to have later on? Or are we planning to use the last dollar and say, okay, honey, I gave you an education and off you go. You're on your own. So it depends. The rule of thumb of the industry is all debts and then 10 times salary.
10 times salary.
My question is it net? Is it gross? And does the person who becomes the beneficiary know how to manage that money? Because that can go like this. So that's why it's important to have a relationship with the advisor on both parties, the spouses, and then that's where the slogan that we use that you're not the client came to life. Or like, give me more insurance, less insurance. I'm like, okay, for this to work out, and we're talking about life insurance only, you need to die. Okay. So from there, I'm talking to your spouse. Do you know what to do with this money? Do you know who to call? Do you know what steps you need to take? Are your kids ready? Are they 5 years old? Are they 13 years old? Now, it's not the same insurance need if your kid is 6 months old and if your kid is 23 years old, right? but it's really a personal decision. What we want is for people to think about it, not just follow rules of thumb.
Okay. And there's different types of insurance, whole versus term. Can you tell us about the different types of insurance?
So we use analogies a lot, because for some reason, when it comes to your own finances, there's like a velvet purple curtain that drops. So think of insurance like a need, like you need insurance because you need to live somewhere. Term insurance, you're renting insurance. You need insurance, you're renting it, it's cheap and cheery, at the beginning. As you become older, it gets really expensive. And then if you don't pass by the age of 80 or 85, the insurance company thanks you very much for your premiums and wishes you a happy death. The house won, right? Like mortgages, yes, your calculation is over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever your age is. But every 5 or 10 or 20 years, you renegotiate the fee, like the mortgage rate. Why? Because your contract will say, I will continue to insure you until you're 85, but every 10 or 20, depending on the terms you have, I'm going to really ramp up the premiums because I'm going to assume that you're sick. Now, if you don't want me to assume that you're sick, reapply, and depending on what the answer is from that underwriting process, I may or may not give you a better offer. So that's term, but you need to live somewhere. And if you stop paying for that premium, it's essentially you're homeless, right? You have no equity in there or any of that. On the other side of the spectrum, there's whole life and there's also permanent solution. So term has a term 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever you have, till age 85 in most cases. On the permanent side of insurance, it's a very different conversation. Would everybody want to have it? Likely. Can everybody afford it? That's very different. So when it comes to permanent, you have, generally speaking, whole life and universal life. In both cases, there's the insurance component because it's an insurance product, but there's also an investment component. In the whole life version, the insurance company decides how to invest that component, and they pay dividends every year, and then whatever you get, it's yours. Now, you don't really, well, you could get it, but the ideal is you allow that growth to compound tax-free over the years, and the longer you're in it, of course, the magic of the fact that it's not paying taxes, the compounding accelerates really nicely. Again, everything in moderation. On the universal side of things, you have a selection of different funds where you decide how to invest the investment portion of the product. Is it for everyone? No, you need to be actively managing, watching it, understanding what you did, how it works, and it can be super profitable to use that one, but there's also a risk attached to it because this one is subject to market risk. This one, as soon as the dividend is paid, it's yours. Again, is it for everyone? It all depends.
So
Maybe.
What's the advantage of whole and universal over term? You described it as an analogy of renting versus owning a home. So you've got something that's going to be there forever?
So as long as you pay, and you can design the product in many ways. So the owning the house on the insurance side of things is you're building equity, right? And later on in life, you can use that equity to mortgage it, so borrow against it, and use it for something else, your daughter's wedding, university studies, etc. Now, some people are talking about that as a retirement plan. It might work, probably if you started earlier in your 40s or so, but certainly as a retirement plan when you're 65.
But if it's life insurance and it doesn't pay out until you die, how do you borrow against it?
Well, that's a cash value that is generated. So like a house, you pay your mortgage, and the mortgage initially pays for the interest, and then you start putting in capital. With life insurance, at the beginning, your premiums, your deposits pay for the cost of insurance, because the insurance company knows that at some point they will have to pay. And the other little bit is the asset growth, the cash value growth. And then as time goes by, so you have to pay less for the cost of insurance because the rest has been covered. And the capital portion of the growth starts, accumulating faster. But again, to me, it's yes. Do I own it on myself, on my children? Absolutely. I love it. And every time, I can, I buy more because I like it. But it's not a one size fits all. And it's certainly not a blanket to cover all your investment options. So it's this art of finding out the right proportion. If you're going to end up eating cat food because you have to pay your premiums, maybe you went a little too heavy on the premiums.
Well, if you're going for all debts plus 10 times income, my God, that's going to be a lot of insurance and a lot of premiums.
It depends. It depends on the age, and it depends on the health of the person. So if you're insuring a child, it's like the concept sounds morbid and crazy, but I can tell you, after I bought those policies on my children, I actually felt okay buying more mundane things because I know, and the way I organized it is that by the age of when they're turning 40, they will have a certain amount, give or take, you can't do it exactly to the T, of cash value that if they want to use it to pay for a house, a mortgage, or a kid, or whatever they want, they're there.
But if you're cashing out of the cash value, do you give up that insurance that you had?
No, it continues to grow. As long as you're alive, it's great.
So you're not actually cashing out of the cash value, you're borrowing against the cash value.
You're borrowing, yeah, and that thing continues to grow.
So then you got to pay back that debt at some point in time.
If you choose to, if you structure it right, yes, you can maybe just serve as the loan facility.
And it's sort of like a reverse mortgage. You don't pay it off until you die,
so to speak, because if you design the product right, and that's where it comes in into play, the fact that you need to know what you're doing as an advisor. If you're just kind of like going like, oh, just pay me $1 million and then the rest, I don't know what happens. That's a really bad idea. A missold insurance policy can really wreck families. So yes, in theory, if you can structure it right, the death benefit will be higher than the cash value at the time that we think that they might need to access it. So an insurance policy could become a safety net for people that they might be at risk of outliving their savings. It's like, and there's an important point to talk about. What's the right way to deplete your assets in retirement? Do you go first for the registered, the non-registered, and like, what do you have? And then let's come up with the best way to access that money so you keep more money in your jeans as opposed to CRA. Love their hearts, bless them all, but they take a lot. So
no question, don't they ever? We're chatting today with Elke Rubach, who is the principal of Rubach Wealth. She's a leading wealth management firm. She founded in 2012. She's a lawyer. Her mission is to provide tax-efficient financial planning to help clients build multi-generational legacies. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments with Elke in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. There's a silence. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Elke Rubach. She's the principal of Rubach Wealth. It's a leading wealth management firm that she founded in 2012. As I mentioned before, she's got more letters after her name: LLB, LLM, CFP, CLU, FEA, than almost anyone I've ever met. Some pretty impressive educational and other criteria. In your write-up, Elke, you said that you drew in your wealth management business from your personal experience of facing an unexpected financial crisis. Can you tell us a little bit about that at all?
Absolutely. Well, I was just a little kid. And that kind of is the foundation of the firm, normalizing the conversation around money and death. But one day you wake up and you hear that your dad died. And we had assets and we had houses and we had stuff. But we were 4, and then all of a sudden my mom had to figure it out and, how does this work? And she wasn't working, so she had to start working. I mean, this is a million years ago, but but still, she wasn't working. She had to start working. She had to start figuring it out. And I just saw how, instead of us just being sad because he had passed, I became what do we sell first? Where are the accounts? And as a little kid, you're just seeing the stress around you. You're like, what's going on? This was supposed to be a safe place, and now it's like it's chaos. So if people have the conversation, do the minimum level of financial planning that they owe at least to their children and then themselves, this can be avoided. It's really easy to avoid.
I had an emergency preparedness expert on, and he said one of the things we don't do often enough, and he used this relative to the pandemic, and he also used it relative to some of the riots a year ago, and he used it again relative to the war in Ukraine. And he says we got to ask those questions like, what if somebody dies? What if we lose the house? What if there's a fire? What if dad or mom lose their job? What if someone gets COVID-19? What if we've got to rush to the hospital? What if Russia attacks? And we as a family should think through some of those questions and come up with some answers. Do you think that's a good idea? I
think that's as necessary as it is uncommon, unfortunately. Absolutely. It's, that's why they explain on the plane where the emergency exits are. Are they planning on having an accident? No, but what if, right? Imagine the chaos in a little plane when they don't know which way to go. So find your nearest emergency exit and head that way. So absolutely. What happens? So that goes to think about having a will. What if you die? Think of having powers of attorney. You didn't die. So who's going to decide for your money or your assets and for your health? Okay, you are getting married. Get a prenup, get a cohabitation agreement. You might not need it, and lucky you if you never need it. But if you do, it's a lot easier to negotiate the terms when you are in a good position than when you're fighting. So
what's a cohabitation agreement versus a prenup?
Prenup is it's heading towards marriage. Cohabitation, we just live together, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're getting married.
Okay, so common law,
or even with flatmates or common
roommates. Okay,
roommates. Yeah.
Is there a book or a podcast series or something rather that you'd recommend for people that are interested in this topic? Number one. And number two, if people want to reach out to you, how do they reach out to you if they're interested?
Absolutely. Sure. Podcasts. I follow a few in the States. If you don't mind, I'll send you the list later so you can share with your listeners. That's exactly what I was looking for. Books. I mean, The Wealthy Barber, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's no shortage of books, but really what I want people to understand is you can read, you can go to the public library and read absolutely every book. It's only until you understand the importance of this, you understand the implications of not taking action, and you want it badly enough that you're ready to go, that you're going to do something about it. Call it a diet plan, or if you don't want it badly enough, you're not going to do it. And you can spend hours and millions of dollars on books. So just do it. Start from the beginning. Understand your cash flow. Understand your debt, your assets, and then take it from there. I am going to be writing a book myself, starting now. We're kind of like setting it up. And it's exactly that, about, the importance of normalizing the conversation. It doesn't have to be complicated. Actually, a simple plan is better.
And do you have your own website people should go to?
Yes. So my website is www.rubachwealth.com. And to reach me, and we're on social media. On social media, we have years and years and years of content, small articles where they can find, early in your career, mid-career, late career, family planning, mortgage payments, tax efficiencies, philanthropic giving, etc. Like there's a million.
And the social
Happy
media
to
is
answer.
under your name or under Rubach Wealth?
Both. So people can contact me directly. So my strongest is LinkedIn. So it's at Elke Rubach. And then also LinkedIn, the business page is Rubach Wealth. We're on Instagram and Facebook. But honestly, the easiest way to contact me is by either by phone, 647-808-7700, or just an email, elke@rubachwealth.com.
Elke Rubach of Rubach Wealth, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If I can just finish with my own point of view, I think you're right that the vast majority of people don't think through things like a will until it's too late, guardianship until it's too late. And too often insurance we get from our brother-in-law or our school friend or something like that, rather than thinking through what we really want, what we really need. And when you think about how important our futures are to our spouse, if we have one, or our children, and we don't plan it better, it's really a shame and something we've got to pay a lot more attention to. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us a little bit about what we got to do to make the conversation more normalized. Appreciate it, Elke. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's our show for today, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at saga960am.ca. You can get all my podcasts and videocasts on briancrombie.com. My videos are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and my podcasts are on Apple, Audible, and Speakeasy Podcasts. Thanks for joining us. Elke, good night.
Thank you. Good night.